All right. Keep on coming in. Thanks a lot. Welcome to San Francisco and our Build conference. My name's Ed Blankenship. I'm a product manager at Microsoft for Visual Studio Online, ALM, and our DevOps family of products. And here, I'm really glad you could join us. I'm actually really excited. So this is the first ALM and DevOps session for the conference. And so we're going to go through a broad set of what we're doing, and I have a lot of great announcements to let you know about, but I'm really actually excited more about showing you all the great work that the team has put together to show you today. And so to get us started, I just want to set a little bit of a context. As we've gone through the first decade of Agile, what we've really noticed is that we've gotten development teams to get really, really efficient at creating software. The other thing we saw in the first decade of Agile is that there was two distinct life cycles. We've got the application development life cycle and the operations life cycle. And they were very different. And now, as we move into the second decade of Agile, what we're noticing is that there's a convergence of those two life cycles into one life cycle, which is DevOps. And so today, we're going to talk about how do we use DevOps practices and methodologies as a strategic driver toward business agility. Now, there's no question, doing business is really tough today. And we've talked to lots of customers across lots of different industries, and there are three main things that keep coming up. Business is getting faster every day, and markets can turn on a dime. And competition is getting stronger as well. And so today's edge that you build becomes tomorrow's mainstream. Now, the need to go from idea to reality in a radically shortened time frame is really putting huge pressure on development teams to deliver more quickly. And since every company is a software company, those that can deliver software more quickly at better high quality are going to be the ones that end up surviving. But how is it that some companies like Netflix and Amazon and Etsy and Facebook regularly deliver new features and new value to their customers, while there's other organizations that wait weeks and months to deploy those new features? And so what we end up seeing is frustration on all sides. So if you think about business and our consumers and IT, they're really frustrated because they see a lack of collaboration between the development team and the operations team. Now, that just increases time and delay and labor involved in actually delivering and maintaining software, which isn't a good thing in a world where we actually have to be quicker. Now, once you add to that the problem that much of what we build is based on assumptions instead of hard data, and you can see how this easily leads a team to end up building the wrong thing. That's not good. Now, the inability of delivering software efficiently and react quickly to changes in the market lead to much more than just frustration. In the long run, this can end up threatening your business. Now, in the real world, there are real consequences if you're unable to deliver software quickly and efficiently. So for example, 40% of implementations that we end up seeing end up failing and have to be reworked because they don't end up meeting users' original requirements. Now, when you add to that, oh, there you go. It's really expensive whenever there's downtime. Our latest estimate is about $100,000 for customer-facing apps for every hour that it's down in production. And then if you also pair that with how long it takes to actually fix those problems, about 200 minutes or over 2 hours, it becomes really expensive. Now, one good thing that we've been seeing is that we've seen 3/4 of development teams actually adopting Agile methodologies. And that's a great thing, especially in 2015. But it doesn't help if a development team is Agile, but deployment still takes weeks and months because the IT ops team is perceived as not being Agile. Now, these are just three very high-level examples out of many of the many data points that all point towards the same conclusion. And this is more than just about frustration or minor delays. When you have a lack of collaboration between your development team and operations team, it ends up having a substantial impact on your business. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our journey in developer division. So I'm sure you know the developers in the audience have seen the Visual Studio releases for many, many years. They used to be every about 3 years, and we had to switch to become a lot more quick. And so we used to have these milestone-based releases, so beta, RC, RTM, and they were just really, really long. Now, before I joined Microsoft, I was a Microsoft MVP for many, many years. And I got really good at figuring out when to give feedback to the PMs so that they can take advantage of the feedback and then pivot. But when I joined Microsoft in engineering as a PM, I remember very, very well, we ended up having conversations, and depending where those conversations were having, for example, I had one that was at the end of our release cycle towards RTM, and it was really good feedback from the customer, but I couldn't take it. I had to basically tell them, well, that's really good feedback, but I might be able to get to it in about 3 years. And that's just absurd. And so what we've done is our organization has actually moved to a 3-week release cadence, not only for Visual Studio Online, which is our cloud-based service, but also you get CTP builds of Visual Studio every 3 weeks. Now, they're potentially shippable increments. Not all of them go out, but most of them do. And we're able to get feedback a lot more quickly. And for us, the key to success was that close collaboration between development and operations. We have to be one team. And so if you're interested in more about our particular story, you can go to stories.visualstudio.com to get more details. But based on what we've learned and what we've seen in teams in the industry, that converged DevOps lifecycle gives you the ability to execute on ideas quickly and iterate on feedback rapidly so you're building the right product. Now, DevOps practices emphasize 3 main things. You may have heard of these. Systems thinking, breaking down of silos, and collaboration and flow of value. Now, DevOps is not so much about tools. It's really around people first, and then process second, and the tools are just there to help you facilitate the cultural and process changes that you need to make. Now at Microsoft, the DevOps investments we're making inside of Visual Studio Online, Team Foundation Server, and Azure reflect on our focus on enabling and empowering teams everywhere to get great software in the hands of your customers. Now, let's take a look at some of the work that we're doing today. So I'm going to go at a very high level. We got a lot of great breakout sessions coming in, so you can get into deeper, but I'm just going to give you a whole bunch of stuff right now. So we'll start with the left side of the cycle, which is around plan. So really, plan is all about how to turn your idea into reality. In a DevOps world, it's all about hypothesis-driven and creating experiments. And so we're building tools to help you out with that. And so let me show you a few of the things that we've been working on. So let me switch over here. OK, the first thing I want to show you is our #1 requested feature for many, many years. I remember as an MVP, I needed this one as well. And so what you can do now is I'm going to go to the admin portal. I'm going to go to the collection admin view, and I can take any one of our team projects, and guess what you can do today? Rename. All right, yeah, that's OK. I know. It took us a little while to do that, but it's there now, and we've got a much better architecture now after this. So this has really been great. So just a little while ago, I don't know how many of you voted on it in the room, but we had over 6,000 votes. We just flipped it over from planned to completed. So we shipped out the Team Foundation Server 2015 RC, and it's also available in Visual Studio Online as well. And so I bring this up because user voice is actually a really good way to get feedback from your customers. We use it as well. But as we use it, I'm going to go into our admin experience here. User voice happens to have been one of our partners that has been taking advantage of our extensibility platform. So we've had an open ALM extensibility platform for Visual Studio Online for a while that revolves around 3 main web standard kind of extensibility points, which are REST APIs, service hooks, and OAuth. And user voice happens to be one of those. So you can see right in here, this is the admin experience. This is our Visual Studio user voice account that's connected to our Visual Studio Online account. You can just link up. User voice has built some really nice stuff. But one thing that they haven't been able to do is something I'm going to announce today. So if I hop over here, I now have the ability to install Visual Studio Online extensions. Now, what is that? That's what we're announcing today. It's basically a way for partners and customers to be able to create their own extensions and install them into their account, and then now start to have UI extensibility. So you can bake your stuff right into our UI. Our partners and other services are able to bake their abilities into our UI now. So I'm going to show you one of them. We were able to give our MVPs early access. And you see right here, I've got a new team calendar. It's based on some collaboration we did with one of those MVPs. So let's pull this up really quickly. There we go. And so what's the nice thing about extensions is that you can load your own extensions or get them from partners. But this particular one is a UI that's just being drawn. And then it's pulling data from VSO. And so you'll see we've got our sprint data here. I've got personal days off. Those are coming from our capacity management system, as well as team days off. But I can also add custom data. So in this particular one, we'll put build 2015. And we'll make this an event. There we go. So this is custom data from the extension as well as our data from VSO. And so now, in addition to REST APIs and service hooks and OAuth, you're able now to extend and build your own UI inside of our UI and make it really part of the experience. So really glad to announce via Visual Studio Online extensions today. So we're going to see a whole lot of great stuff. We had lots of great examples. Hopefully you'll go out and build your own as well. But some of the other MVPs ended up creating things like branch visualizations. They were able to customize the cards on the task boards and Kanban boards. I saw a really cool one around traceability of work items and start to diagram those. Even our partner eDev has a baselining solution. So we're going to see a whole bunch of these extensions come out now that they're available. And we're all going to be better for it. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you is a lot of the work that our teams have been doing around helping you with implementing Agile and Kanban practices. And so, whoop, wrong one. Let me hop back over there. So if you're not familiar, we've got a task board and also a Kanban board. And we've done a lot of really good work here. So the first thing you'll notice is we've really ramped up the look and feel. We made it a lot lighter. It's a lot more usable in there. We've done things like being able to inline add new items right from the Kanban board. I can edit certain fields, so I can edit the assign to or the effort right from there. I can also start to show additional fields. So this is something that's brand new. For example, bugs, I might want to know what their severity and priorities are. And so we can add any fields that you want on there, and you can customize those. Also, we've started to pop the avatars for the different team members on your team. We're putting those up there. And then also, I don't know if you've noticed this. You see how we have several different columns here? We've got new, approved, spec, in progress, and done. Well, spec and in progress, we've actually put split columns in. And so if you're familiar with Kanban, there's this notion that teams pull from the stage before it in a Kanban process. And so we wanted to be able to help you easily distinguish this. So if you think about dev and QA, QA needs to know what from dev is ready to pull. And then when they're ready to pull, they'll pull it over. So you can go in, you'll notice that the done column is what the next team needs to pull from. And so you can implement Kanban practices that way. And then also we've got some little things. So for example, like definition of done. All of these are customizable by each team. So each team can define their own sets of definition of done for each of the columns in there. And you notice we got markdown support, so you can get it pretty rich for you. Now, one thing we've been doing, a lot of the customization that has been done at the process template level. And so that means your organization, your division defines most of the customization that happens in here. And we've changed our mindset on this in that we want to empower individual teams to work the way that they want to and still have guardrails in place for divisional level sets of processes. So what you're seeing now is we're putting a lot of configuration down at the team level. And so in this particular one, you'll notice we can customize the columns. So every team's allowed to make their own columns, move them around, define definitions of done, whether that's a split column. If you're using work in progress limits, you can also do that from Kanban. The other part is we can also customize each of the cards. And so by work item, you'll notice I can go in. For the bug, I actually put severity and activity on there. You can show tags. You can customize them to your heart's content. And you won't be messing up some other team as they go and track their work. So we're giving a lot of these kinds of settings. Another one of those sets of team settings that a lot of people like to do differently, I've noticed this when I was a process consultant, is everyone likes to handle their bugs a little bit differently. And so we're allowing every team to define the way that they actually manage bugs, whether they're treated as PBIs or they're treated as tasks on the task board. So we give you a lot of flexibility. We're going to just keep continuing and doing that for you so that every team is empowered to do what they need to do. So, all right. Well, let's switch back over here. All right. OK, so once we've been planning, we move into our next phase, which is really around letting developers and testers do what they do best, which is creating software. And so once your iterations have started, you want your developers to be able to take those great ideas and turn them into features. And so there's lots of different activities here around writing code, unit testing. Really, it's around developing quickly and then being really keeping that quality level really high. So let me show you some of the things that we've been doing in this particular space. All right. OK. First thing I'm going to show you is I've got this My Shuttle application. It's just a typical enterprise application with a back end, and there's several front ends. So for example, we're using Xamarin. We've got an iOS and Android project and Windows Phone app here. Our universal apps now. And so let me show you a little bit about what we're doing here. So one thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that developers are able to collaborate a lot better. And so especially as the code base starts to get a lot larger. And so one of the very common things that end up happening is that you, as a developer, you get something assigned to you, and you have to start spelunking through the code and start to figure out what's going on. Now, how many folks are familiar with our Code Lens feature that's available in Visual Studio? Great. All right. So we've got Code Lens today. We've added a few new changes in there. For example, as I pull up the changes view, I start to see who's been contributing to this method or this class at whichever level you want to go. Across the many days, I can see how many merges have come in place. But what this is really nice to do is be able to say, hey, who's that subject matter expert who understands this particular class or method? And so you can start to go bother them when there are problems in their code. But we've got lots of other indicators that start to come in. We give you this heads-up display. And so one of the things I wanted to mention was that for the longest time, Code Lens in Visual Studio Online was one of the very top requests that we've gotten. And so today, we're marking our general availability of Code Lens inside of Visual Studio Online. And so one more thing I want to make sure that you know is that we want to make sure that all of your developers have access to it. So we've also moved Code Lens in Visual Studio Online, or sorry, in Visual Studio 2015 to be available now in Visual Studio Professional and above. And so, all right, yeah. It was really hard to do, but I'm glad you like that. So now Code Lens is available, and it's really going to help you start to collaborate better across your team. And so it's a big reason why you should upgrade to Visual Studio 2015. Now, not only is collaboration important, but also keeping quality up. And so quality is a really, really key thing. And so automated unit tests are actually your first line of defense to be able to keep quality up, especially as you start to ship software more quickly. The last thing you really want to do is actually ship bugs more quickly to production. And so we don't want to do that. So one thing we're introducing in Visual Studio 2015 is our new IntelliTest feature. And so I'm going to click Run IntelliTest here. And what it's doing is it's starting to discover all the different ways that a particular method is being called. Now, we can talk about code coverage, and code coverage just goes and says, hey, are my set of tests actually covering the lines of code that are in my application? But actually getting high code coverage is not going to be sufficient enough. Because how many times do you have an if statement, and the if statement might go in different methods, or every line actually could start to go lots of different paths, especially as you start to look at the methods that are underneath it. There's all sorts of things that happen there. So really what you want to do is you want to have the minimal amount of unit tests that actually cover all the bounds and all the what we call arcs in the logic of your application. And so with IntelliTest, we will discover the minimal set of tests. So for example, hey, I'll pass in null for the employee class. Or I might go in and say 360, and then employee is a complex type, so we'll actually start to figure out what are all the combinations that we need to do there. And now, instead of just having high code coverage, you're now going to start to have high arc coverage. Because at any point in time, you can go in, save that set of unit tests, and then it's going to create a whole unit test project for you and that set of tests. You're going to have great arc coverage from that. And so this is really going to help developers start to get a great suite of automated tests just to get started with. Anyone like that? All right. Yeah, it's a great set of stuff. So IntelliTest. IntelliTest is now available in Visual Studio 2015 for you to kick the tires in the release candidates. So give that a try. Now, let me pop this open here. Now, the other thing you need to do in order to keep quality up is not only have a set of automation, but a lot of times you just need to get another set of human eyes or additional set of human eyes on the code that you're introducing to production. And so we do that through peer reviews, whether that's through code reviews or pull requests. And so we have a very rich pull request system inside of Visual Studio Online when you're using Git, or code reviews if you're using Team Foundation version control. But you'll notice in our pull request system, you're able to see all the pull requests that are coming in. I have one assigned to here for me. And I'm going to pull it up from Sachin. All right, cool. OK, so let's take a look at his pull requests. All right, it looks like he has a topic branch here, and he's merging to master. So actually, we probably should make sure that his code is pretty good. And you'll notice we've got several different files that are part of this pull request. There's a discussion going on here that we'll come back to. If I go over to the code, you'll see there's a couple of commits happening here. All right, that's cool. It's got a new line there, new file. There's a bunch of changes in here, so we'll want to take a look at that. We also can keep track of what work items, so what bugs or tasks are being implemented in this pull request. So if we want to go take a look at the requirements or details about those, we can go do that as well. But if I come back to the discussion, you'll notice we're doing a couple of different things. We're checking to make sure there's no merge conflicts if there end up being any. We'll keep track of multiple commits. But you'll notice we have a discussion going on here. So it says, hey, Ed Bryan, can you take a look at the fair calculation logic? Michael said it looked OK. Oh, no. Michael said you need to do that, too. OK. I think this looks OK. So looks like the right logic. OK. I'll add that in there. And these are just inline discussions that are happening into the line of code. And then we can mark each of these threads as being done or not. So over time, we can actually keep track of all the information that we're gathering for this. But you imagine if you're in a regulated industry, all this great information that you can sit your auditors in front of, it's a lot of really good stuff. But we can also track responses for teams with the reviewers. So I can assign a pull request to the whole team, and anyone can pick up and start to review from it, or I can assign it to specific people. And so I'm actually OK with this change. So I'm going to go in. I could set rejected or waiting for author. Those are always fun when we do that internally. But I'm going to say it's approved with suggestions. And you'll notice it's now saying that it's ready to go. Let me, the target branch was updated, so let's track it again. Oh, merge conflicts. Oh, we're not going to be able to push that one. So that's OK. I could just, as soon as someone approves it, as long as there's no denies, we can go in and complete that pull request, and it will go in and merge it behind the scenes for us. So it's a really awesome pull request system, and we're really happy about doing that. So that's another way of you being able to increase the quality of the code that you're pushing through to production. Now, another thing that we have is, how many folks are familiar with SonarQube? Yeah? All right. So SonarQube is actually a really popular solution in the Java world, and really it's all around managing your technical debt. Now, technical debt, all it is a set of problems that end up impeding forward progress and your ability just to continually put new value to customers. And so that's everything from like code issues and bugs and all sorts of stuff. And really, you want to be paying that debt off over time. You don't want to let it start to snowball, because eventually you'll end up spending 50% of your time on just managing the technical debt that you have. And so what we've done is we've partnered with Sonar Source, who's the creator of SonarQube, to actually integrate this as part of the build process for both Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio Online. And the other thing that's really nice is Java developers have loved SonarQube for a while. Now .NET developers have access to SonarQube. So we're going to now, I'm going to show you, I've got a C# project in here, and we're starting to get things like lines of code, files, functions. If I start to pop in here, I'm also noticing that I have lots of different issues. And if I open up one of these issues, it'll actually tell me where in the code that it's finding those issues. And we can keep track of these. And one of the really important things that you'll want to do is keep track from build to build, whether you're creating new debt or paying that debt off. And so you can do that with SonarQube today. Now, if you're not familiar with kind of where this fits within the overall life cycle, you actually do this type of analysis after the compile stage. So you get your binaries, it goes through and starts to do this analysis. And so that's part of the build process for you. So I'm really happy to have SonarQube integration now with Visual Studio Online and Team Foundation Server. Now, is Olivier in here? I think he might be up at the booth, but Olivier is the CEO of Sonar Source, and he's here at the Build Conference. And so if you have any questions, you can come see him up at the Visual Studio Online booth. So, all right. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is our new next generation build system. So we got into build. If you're familiar with our build system, we've always had a really great build system, but one thing that we couldn't do was very easily was actually compile other types of applications. And so what I wanted to start out with is that we've built a brand new build system, and we've open sourced the agent and the tasks. And I'll show you what those tasks look like in a second. But these are all Node.js based. These are open source. We wanted to facilitate an ecosystem and have everyone contribute the best build tasks out there, and then build on top of ours and contribute more so that everyone takes advantage of that. So those are right up there on GitHub right now. And then if I show you our new system, all right, let's pull this one up, and I'll edit it. The one big thing is now, instead of editing your build definitions and customizing them in a Windows workflow file, we now have that experience up in the web. And it's a whole lot easier now to do. So for example, it's just task-based. So you say, hey, this particular build is going to go in and build Visual Studio. It'll build my Android app, my iOS app, Xamarin components, et cetera. And all it is a set of build steps. And so these are those Node.js-based tasks that run on our Node.js-based build agent that can then run on Windows, on Linux, on Mac, and anywhere else Node.js will run. So it's a great new addition to our new build system. And we've got lots of great stuff to get started. You've got Gradle, you've got Ant, you can run Xcode builds. You can do all of these, and we've got lots of different other activities that you can do. And I'll talk a little bit about those in a second. But if I go in and I show you a couple of things, you'll notice we can also decide where our repository is. So if you're hosting your Git repo inside of Visual Studio Online, we can take advantage of that, obviously. But if you're hosting your Git repo in another provider like GitHub or some other provider, you can actually use our build system with those providers as well. And so we're able to do that today, too. A couple of other things like variables. You can use those variables throughout the build tasks that you have going on inside of your build process. Triggers, things like continuous integration. If you want to build every check-in, we can schedule those. So hey, I might want to do a nightly build. The other thing is if you've been with the TFS build system for a while, I know that I used to be a build guy myself, and my team, we used to get really frustrated about this. But now we have the ability of actually tracking configuration changes to your builds. And so we'll keep track of every single one of those. And we can also diff those. So we used to like to play who messed up the build process. And that was awful. But now we're able to do that today. So the new build system will let you keep track of all those. All right, awesome. OK. Now, the last thing I want to do, let's kill that one. I'm actually going to queue a build. And this is going to be my iOS app from that My Shuttle application. And so I think we're good here. All right. Let's see. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually, yep, there we go. All right, so I am actually compiling and running tests on my iOS application. And this is our Node.js agent happens to be running on a Mac. And you can bring your own build server, or you can, whether that's on premises or in the cloud, or you can use our build servers. In this particular case, I brought my own Mac, and I'm using macinacloud.com as a service that you can run Macs. And I installed the agent on there, and I just have my build for my iOS application. And then at the end of that, all those binaries get shipped back to Visual Studio Online, and we hold your drop folders that you can get to at any time. And so the other really nice thing is we won't hide your logs. Everyone told us, don't hide my logs. And so we're now giving you live logs that are coming from those build agents, and then we'll capture those for you to investigate a little bit later. So it's great stuff. We even parallelize things. So if you want to debug in a release build, we'll actually do those in parallel. A lot of really good stuff in our new build system. So feel free to take advantage of that. We'll be shipping that very, very soon for everyone. And then that will also be in Team Foundation Server 2015. So a lot of really good stuff there. All right. Let me switch back over to here. Oops. There we go. All right. Now that we've gotten our build process done, we now have a set of binaries. And so what we need to do is we actually need to get to production at this point. But there's usually a few steps to get there. We usually have to go to dev and QA and pre-production and UAT and all sorts of other environments. And if we're going to speed up that feedback cycle, we need to be able to ship a lot more quickly. And so with this phase, what we're really trying to do is take all the manual steps out of what your release process is and automate those and model those in a way that makes sense to your organization. And so let me show you a little bit of what we're doing here to be able to do that. All right. Yes, I want to leave that page. All right. Now, first thing we want to do is there's usually a set of tests that end up running. So it's not just automated tests, but you might end up having other build verification tests, functional tests, those kinds of things. So one of the things that we wanted to be able to do is make sure that your developers and testers are able to get access to what's happening in the system. So if I come over here, I'm going to open up one of our builds here. Oh, it looks like it's failing. And we've always been able to capture the actual raw results of those automated tests. So if you come in here and you squint, you can start to look at, there's lots of errors of different tests that are going on. But we needed to give you a better experience here. And so if I come up top here, we have a new test results analyzer that we brought from Microsoft Test Manager and moved it into the web and given you a new web experience. And now we're able to start to give you a good view of what's happening in those test runs. Now, this just happens to be a set of automated tests, but if you're also using exploratory tests or manual tests, any of the tests that we allow, including you can turn your JUnit test results into test results that get published here. But we're going to aggregate all those for you. We're going to give you some really good information. So you notice I have 30 automated tests in this particular test run, and 10 of them look like they're failing. And I can see We'll track by priority, so how many are passing and failing by the priority. So your P2 suite usually has more in them. We can also track to see and let your testers start to identify the failures. So in this case, we don't need to know the failure type for all of them except for these failed ones. And so what we can start to do is I can come over to the individual test results themselves, and let's see if I can find one of the failed ones. Yeah, let's do this one. All right, so we start to get information here. This one just happens to be a really simple test, but if you were doing a manual test and the tester marked it failed, you can get the recordings of the video logs, screenshots, teletrace files. There's all sorts of stuff that we'll show here. And then you can go in and create a bug, and it'll create a really nice, rich bug with all that data. And it ties back to the test result itself here. So you're getting a lot of really good traceability. But I can also, after I've analyzed this, your tester can go in and say, hey, yeah, this is a regression or it's a new issue. And we can keep marking those so that when we go back to, let's see here. When we go back to here, we'll update that dashboard view so that you can start to see for that particular test run what were all the different failure types. So we're going to be a whole lot better test result experience here. So a lot of good stuff there. Now the other thing that we're doing is based on our acquisition of InRelease, which is release management technology, we've spent some time actually moving that experience up into the web and actually making it a lot better. So I'm happy to show you for the first time our new release management experience. So this is built on top of the build system. It uses the same exact agents, so those are all Node.js-based agents. They also use the same task infrastructure. So now we're able to start to model what our release pipeline looks like. And so you can start to create stages that end up matching your environments. And we're going to give you a really good view about where releases are at different points in time. So for example, in this particular one, you notice our CRM release. I can see like what build is actually in the dev environment right now. And I can see that it's been passing for some time. So that's a really good thing. So the 2.0 builds in dev. I've got the 1.7 build in QA and the 1.5 build in CRM. But we're going to give you a whole lot better information in here. Now, the one thing that we should go and take a look at is I'm going to go in, take a look at some of the releases that have happened. Oh, yeah. I haven't done any today, so let's bring that up. There we go. Let's go back to the 1.5 release. We can start to actually get really good data about what happened with this release. And so you say, hey, when did it go out? It went to Monday. Actually, we were pretty good about shipping that very, very quickly. You see some activity, the artifacts. This happens to use a very specific build or builds from your system. We can also get the logs. So for every single one of the activities that we end up defining, which I'll show you in a second, we can start to track what happened there. We can get to the raw logs that are from there. And so we're getting a really lot of great information for you to be able to look back on. And especially for those of you that are in regulated industries, you're going to want to show your auditors these kinds of things. So now let's take a look at actually editing what a release pipeline looks like. And so if you'll, let me pull this right here so you can see it. See that we're getting cut off a little bit. There you go. So now I can start to define the different stages and then what happens inside those stages. So for example, in the dev environment, I can start to run PowerShell in different machines. I can just do a whole lot of different things inside of here, including running a set of Selenium tests if I want to, or a cloud-based load test in that environment to make sure it's OK. I can do a lot of different things, and I can define what we do in each of those environments. And it's really easy to add additional tasks. Just like our build system, we can pull from that same task library, and these are going to be deployment-specific tasks that you do in there. So imagine I can deploy to Azure, I can deploy to Docker containers, I can run a Chef deployment. I can do all sorts of different things that happen to match each of those environments that you have. Now, it's really easy. Each of those has their own configuration options. I can also go in and add new environments. So if I want to add perf and then move that environment up, I can add as many stages as I want into this process. And we should know also in that world, we may not have builds going all the way through. And so we want to catch failures before they move on to the next phase. And so we'll be able to track that there. Now, another thing that you might want to do, especially for those of you who are in regulated industries, is you don't want everything moving from stage to stage all the way through. Sometimes what we need is the ability to track a human approval. And so we're able to actually track those as well. So if I come here, our VP, Brian Harry, if I can spell his name right, Brian, there we go. We'll have Brian and Climmery be the approvers before it gets deployed out into production. And so once I do that, anything that makes it to the next point, we'll actually ask each of them to approve this before it goes on. And so typically, an IT ops person will end up being the person that does those. But we'll track those approvals as well. That gets tracked into our database, and we'll end up having traceability for all those as well. And so this is our new experience for release management. It's really, really easy to use. And we hope that that's going to be really helpful for you to start to track all of your releases. All right, cool. All right. Now, let me move back over here. Now, finally, we move into the last phase. So now that we have moved our builds into production, one of the big challenges that we have in DevOps, in implementing DevOps practices, is making sure that we not only release quickly, but we end up learning quickly. And we need to be able to learn quickly so that we can build the right product for our customers. And so, really, that's where we are here. And we want to take advantage of what we can learn from production. And so we do that using a service we're providing as Application Insights as part of Visual Studio Online. And what we're announcing today is that we're moving Application Insights into being a public preview service. And so the other thing we're announcing is that in December, we made an acquisition of Hockey App, if you're familiar with them. We're taking the capabilities around iOS and Android crash analytics, and we've now incorporated that into Application Insights as well. And so we've got pricing details, including a free tier available. But let me actually show you what Application Insights looks like. Now, there's three main things that you're going to want to think about as we want to learn from production. And so that is my application available? Is it performing well? And then ultimately, how are my users using my application? And so first, I just wanted to give you a sense of what this is. Application Insights is our service, and you just start to send data from both your back-end servers on the service side, as well as your client devices. So you think about mobile devices and tablets and all of those other devices that could end up putting up data. And so I just pulled up our GitHub repo here that shows you all the different SDKs that we do have available. And so you can contribute your own as well, and we'll just keep adding to this list as we keep going on. But you can literally send data from any part of your application. And what we'll do is we'll take all that data and give you a 360-degree view of what your application is doing. And so if I look at, first I'm going to look at our back-end set of services. And so we're getting all sorts of really great information. So we're getting cut off again here. So I'm going to do this. There we go. All right, cool. So if you'll notice, I'm giving you a good overview of what's happening here. You'll see, hey, we're getting a really good response time. The page loads are pretty good. Getting lots of server requests. That's great. Lots of users. The only bad thing is we have some failed requests here, so we're going to want to dive into deeper here. But how many developers typically have access to production to be able to figure this out? Yeah, not many. So what we're doing is we're trying to give this data into developers' hands. And so the first thing that we usually want to know about is our application available? And so if I look into availability, what you'll notice is that we can now start to have both simple ping tests as well as complex tests. And we'll run those tests for you from data centers around the world to let you know before your customers know when your app is down. And so I think we're doing pretty good here. We can start to get some more details about what's going on there. We've got a few failures, and we can go in and dive into the details, but pretty much we're looking pretty good. And whenever there is a problem, we'll go ahead and email you whenever we notice something, so you can get your development team on it as quickly as possible. Now, the other thing that we want to do is we actually want to understand what's happening with these failures. And so if I come over here and I click on failures, we can start to understand what's happened. So you'll notice I've got some failed requests here. I've got on different pages. So for example, this is an MVC app. So we've got search controllers, about controllers. It looks like the search page is getting a lot of hits there. I can also see the types of exceptions that are happening. And so if I click on this top one here, let's see, let's pull this up. All right, we got an exception here. And now I'm starting to get really rich information about what's happening, including lines of code, the types of applications. I can dive in deeper if I wanted to, figure out the call stacks. For example, I can filter out just my code or see the whole thing, and I can start to understand where these exceptions are happening so I can get back to code very, very quickly. And so if I want to, I can also look at the telemetry for that particular user session where it happened, and I can start to see what they were doing. So they hit the home page. Then they started to get a bunch of exceptions. So we're capturing all this great data that's happening on the server side and shipping that back up so the developers can start to get and resolve their problems a lot quicker and get to root cause analysis. All right, so that's one part of it as well. The other part about application insights is learning what your customers are doing and how they're using the application. And so we have really rich usage analysis. You'll notice I can take a look at different things like number of users, the types of events the types of features that they're using. So we can start to see what are our most popular features so that we can make investment decisions and decide whether to pivot or persevere based on the usage. And so we're getting lots of really great data here. But what's really nice is the ability to define your own metrics. And so these are what we call custom events. So I'm going to open up the custom events view. And this is where your developers can start to define different metric points. So for example, we've got some metric points for how features are being used. So every time a feature hits a certain point, we can push data back up, and we'll aggregate those for you. The other really good thing is we can start to collect all sorts of other information behind the scenes. So for example, in our My Shuttle app, what ends up happening, it's a very much like an Uber app so that people are searching for cabs and those kinds of things. But one thing we might want to know is average trip cost. And so this is a custom event that we've gone in and aggregated, and we're going to start to bring that data into the view here. There we go. So now we're starting to see over time the different average trip costs per day. And so these are these custom events for you to be able to set your own hypothesis and understand where your customers are using your particular part of the application. So this is a great part of application insights. Now finally, the last thing I want to show you is really around our new device capabilities. And so this is understanding how your customers are using all the different devices that you have across all the different platforms. So you think about Android, iOS, and as well as Windows-based platforms. And so what you can see is we're starting to get even information from there. You can see we've got lots of users, lots of sessions, page views. I can start to dive in deeper. You're also getting feature analysis, so you can understand the top features from your customers on your device apps, where they are around the world. So this is really important information. The device types, those are really great. But the other thing I notice is we're actually getting a fair number of crashes that are happening. And so I know that we've released a new app version. So let's see what's going on here. All right, so we've got 107 users that are impacted, so we need to start taking a look at those. So if I start to grab here, this is actually coming, I can notice that this is coming from Swift. in my iOS app. And yep, sure enough, that latest version is causing some more problems here. So we saw it a few times before, but we're actually seeing it a lot more. So I can start to dive in deeper here. I can start to take a look at the exceptions, and we use technology called symbolification behind the scenes to start to get to information like the call stack and line numbers, and we can figure out devices, and we can also start to take a look at the customer journey for how they got there. So if I look at the telemetry for that particular user session, I can notice, hey, what were they actually doing before they got that crash? And so if I pull this down here, okay, they checked the cab status, they ordered a cab, and then the exception happens. And that's when we got the data back from that. So this is already starting to give you a lot better information about helping you get to root cause analysis. But also we can start to make good decisions and speed up our process so that we're learning the right things so that we can build the right things for our customers. And so this is Application Insights in a nutshell. We've got a lot of great stuff. You can go in and give it a try in the Azure portal today. And so it's right there, right alongside your infrastructure, and you're going to get a lot of really good stuff out of that. OK, so let me move back over here. Now, I really wanted to give you a sense of how Microsoft has been investing in DevOps across the entire lifecycle. And really, our solution with Team Foundation Server, whether you want to run it on premises or use Visual Studio Online, which is our hosted version of TFS and related services, we want to make sure that every team is empowered to be able to implement DevOps practices and get better at building software quickly and building the right software. And so we have lots of capabilities here. For Java developers, for Eclipse developers, and Xcode developers, they're all able to jump in now with lots of great capabilities in our release management service, our build service, with Git repos, work item tracking. All of those things are now available for every developer and every team across your organization. And so I showed you a lot of what we've already built and what's available or things that are soon to be available. But let me tell you a little bit about kind of our roadmap ahead and how we're thinking about futures. And really, that's around 4 key themes. So the first one being helping enterprise customers and large customers scale Agile. And so there's a few things like reporting support, starting with Power BI with Visual Studio Online. We're going to let you customize your work items as well. And then if we move forward, there's another theme around collaborating on code a lot better. And so there's a couple of things in here. The one I like to point out usually is having a hosted package management service. We have NuGet up here, but we're also making sure that we cover other very popular package management solutions like NPM and others. And then if we think about continuous delivery as another theme of investments, we're wanting to help you out with as part of the release pipeline, you want to make sure that you can efficiently use infrastructure as part of each stage. And so we're going to make some dev test lab management enhancements so that you can provision new environments and deprovision them at the end of this at the end of the stage. So we're going to help you efficiently use infrastructure for dev and test purposes. And then finally, as we think about learning from production, we're going to do things like better dashboarding support and then move application insights onto the journey towards general availability. And so lots of great stuff that the team's already done and lots of great stuff that the team will continue to do. And we just touched on several of those. But really what I'd like you to do is we're going to dive in deep onto each piece of what we showed you today. I know Donovan has a session right after this around our new release management system. But you can go away, create your own Visual Studio Online account for free. You can try out Application Insights for free as well. And then also be sure to take advantage of downloading the Visual Studio 2015 release candidate, as well as the Team Foundation Server 2015 release candidate. And then finally, we've got some giveaways going on. I apologize, we don't have enough time for questions, but I'll stay here afterwards. And then we are also all going to be working up at the booth, so come see us at the Visual Studio Online and the ALM and DevOps booth. And so we'll be there. I'll be happy to answer some questions for you there. And then finally, be sure to help us out and let us know what you think by evaluating this session. And then come find me. So I'll be here for it. But thank you so much for being here at Build, and go find the other ALM sessions as well and dive in deeper. Thanks a lot.